New details about the strike in Iran. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is challenging a leaked intelligence report on the attack, claiming the media is undermining the success of the mission, while Iran's supreme leader claims victory over the U.S., saying Iran delivered a slap to America's face. The mystery fireball over the southeast, drivers startled by a daytime fireball streaking across the sky, and the sonic boom that followed. Prosecutors make their closing arguments in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Their final message to the jury as they try to prove the music mogul is guilty beyond reasonable doubt. During the LA wildfires, firefighters rushed in to save residents and their houses, in the process breathing in smoke, chemicals, and toxic contaminants. Some now fear growing health issues. In tonight's Prime Focus, Matt Gutman investigates what's being done now to help the firefighters.
That's all.
Anna Wintour, famous for her 4 decades of leadership with an iron fist at Vogue magazine, immortalized by Meryl Streep, is stepping down as editor-in-chief in order to take on a new role. What is she doing next, and what does it mean for Vogue?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with that heated debate over the damage from those attacks in Iran. Tonight, the Pentagon is out with new findings, and the Defense Department revealed they'd been studying this plan of a possible strike on Iran for 15 years, saying the 30,000-pound bombs exploded exactly as planned. Tonight, President Trump is insisting Iran did not remove its enriched uranium, even though early intelligence indicated much of it had been moved. Iran's supreme leader tonight has resurfaced and has a warning for the White House. We're standing by to hear from Senator Alyssa Slotkin, a former CIA agent who received a classified briefing from administration officials today. But first, ABC's senior political correspondent Rachel Scott leads us off from the White House.
Tonight, the Trump administration dispatching the Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to pump up the president's claim that the U.S. strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Secretary Pete Hegseth angrily dismissing an early Pentagon intelligence report that sources say indicates the attack only set back Iran's program a few months.
Anyone with, two eyes, some ears, and a brain can recognize that kind of firepower with that specificity at that location and others is going to have a devastating effect.
Hegseth and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane insisted recent intelligence assessments show the sites were severely damaged, but offered no new evidence or intelligence to indicate Iran's nuclear program was in fact destroyed. Kane saying that's a question for America's spy agencies, instead offering new details about the intricate attack he says had been discussed and strategized for 15 years over the course of several administrations.
The weapons were built, tested, and loaded properly. 2, the weapons were released on speed and on parameters. 3, the weapons all guided to their intended targets and to their intended aim points.
The general adding the massive bunker buster bombs exploded exactly as planned.
We know that the trailing jets saw the first weapons function, and the pilots stated, quote, "This was the brightest explosion that I've ever seen. It literally looked like daylight."
The early intelligence report indicated Iran removed much of its stash of near weapons-grade uranium before the strike. Today, the president insisting that's not true, posting nothing was taken out of facility, would take too long, too dangerous, and very heavy and hard to move. And tonight, new questions about the president's claims that Iran and the U.S. would be meeting next week.
We're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's that necessary.
But today, the White House press secretary says there is no meeting on the books.
We don't have anything scheduled as of now.
What is the holdup here in trying to schedule it? Are you experiencing any resistance from the Iranians?
No, have some patience.
And today in Iran, the supreme leader sounding defiant in his first public statement since the attack, claiming the U.S. failed to achieve anything significant and adding Trump, quote, grossly exaggerated.
Many had been wondering where he was. Rachel Scott joins us now from the White House. So, Rachel, what was the reaction at the White House to the Ayatollah's message?
Well, the White House certainly paying attention because he has been in hiding, but they're brushing off his words and his statements. But it is striking because it does come as the United Nations nuclear watchdog. The head of that said that Fordow, which is the most important nuclear facility that Iran has, suffered enormous damage and is no longer operational. But they did stop short of it saying that it has been completely obliterated, as President Trump has said. You have these different and ranging assessments going here from the White House to the United Nations to Iran as well, Lindsay.
All right, Rachel Scott for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. Joining us now for more is Michigan Democratic Senator Elissa Slotkin. Senator, thank you so much for your time. You received a classified all-Senate briefing on the Iran attacks today. I know you can't talk about many particulars, but overall, were you satisfied with the information you heard from the administration?
Well, it was definitely good to have the briefing, right? Normally you'd have a strike and as soon as possible, next business day, you'd have a briefing. So it was good to finally have it. And it was definitely noticeable that the Director of National Intelligence wasn't there. But, you know, I think it gave a picture of significant damage that was done, certainly, by the strikes. I think it's way too early to know, and I think that was borne out in the meeting, that it's way too early to know the exact parameters of the battle damage. And again, the military conducts the strike, the intelligence community conducts the battle damage assessment. So it's going to take a minute to figure that out. But there was significant damage done, and I think it was good that we got the brief.
You, of course, used to work at the CIA and served 3 tours in Iraq alongside U.S. military. Given that, how do you feel about the classified intelligence about the attack success being debated out in the open?
I mean, look, you always want both our military and our intelligence community to be completely apolitical, to not have it be this politicized football between Democrats and Republicans, because it's what keeps us safe, right? That should be off limits for this kind of political gamesmanship. But I think the president is not using the intelligence community to make his statements. He's saying whatever he wants to say. And I think it's just important when we're talking about issues of war and peace to be really clear on the facts, especially for a country that just got out of Iraq and Afghanistan within living memory. So, you know, I think I don't like to see it politicized. I think it's really hurtful to the country.
Iran, one of America's main adversaries, is certainly more crippled than they were this time last week. And now Iran and Israel have a ceasefire. Would you say this is job well done by the Trump administration?
You know, again, I think it's still too early to tell. You know, I was at the Pentagon after I was at the CIA, and we worked on Iran planning back then to think about these kinds of scenarios. It's definitely the weakest I've seen Iran, I think, because of these strikes, but also just the changes that have been happening in the region over the past 2 years. But I think my influence on this really comes from serving 3 tours in Iraq, right, where the Iranians were not good actors. They were killing Americans. They were using ballistic missiles. They were, you know, using terrorism to achieve their goals. But I also was in Iraq to see how, you know, the administration back then thought, oh yeah, the operations in Iraq will be really easy, one and done. We'll manage it all. And meanwhile, 20 years later, we still have troops in the country. So I am concerned about people like the Secretary of Defense and the President managing escalation. When this strike happened, we're lucky that none of our soldiers were killed in our bases in Qatar and Iraq and other places. But there's no doubt about it that Iran is the weakest that it's been in my lifetime.
Democrats are in a position on the so-called Big Beautiful Bill of really just trying to play spoilers at this point. We've heard a growing number of Senate Republicans express concerns about the Medicaid cuts. Are you talking behind the scenes to Republicans on the fence, trying to get them to say no?
Well, I think we all are. Yeah. I mean, I think particularly given the cuts to health care. I mean, I think to put it in real terms, these Medicaid cuts that they're talking about and the cuts to Obamacare would mean that every American, not just someone who's on Medicaid, is either at risk of losing their health care or paying more for their private insurance by January 1. And I think they're trying to hide that and paper over that. And so using that issue, a bunch of us are trying to have those conversations with Republicans, like, don't do this. You know it's not a popular thing. You know it's not the right thing to do to cut people's insurance and to make people pay more. Is there any American who who thinks that healthcare is going well right now in America. So, yes, we're having those conversations. At the end of the day, the president is trying to browbeat people into voting for this thing, and soon. And so it's going to be up to my Republican colleagues whether they have a spine on these issues or not.
Today, you spoke about the future of the Democratic Party at the Center for American Progress and said Democrats need an economic war plan, and if they have to slaughter some sacred cows to do it, then you have to do it. You also said we don't act as a team. In sports, if a team is struggling, you replace the manager. Hard question here, but do you have confidence in Senator Schumer and Leader Jeffries, who are the managers, so to speak, in your party?
Yeah, managers, they're hard jobs. They're hard jobs. Look at what happened in New York City in this election a couple of days ago. I think there is no secret that the country is looking for a new generation of leaders across the board, whether in a mayoral race, governorships, Senate, House, like across the board. And that's not new. I think that's a hangover from what happened in the last election with President Biden. So I don't think that's a secret, but I think it's important that Democrats understand that if we don't offer a vision of our own and not just play defense, then we're not going to earn people's vote.
Just to try to re-ask that, do you have confidence in Schumer and Jeffries at this point?
They are the leaders of the House and Senate. I work with them every single day. I push on them every single day, especially in the Senate. I think they would attest to that. And we need to work as a team, and we need wartime generals who are going to get us there because of what's going on in the country. And I have no big announcement to make. I would just say the pressure is there from inside the caucus, but also from the grassroots.
Senator Slotkin, we thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thanks.
Stunning new images show a mystery fireball over multiple states. Drivers were startled by a bright light streaking across the sky. Some reporting shaking and hearing a boom. Was it a meteor or space junk? A piece of it came smashing through someone's roof. Here's our Victor Oquendo.
Tonight, this stunning sight caught on cameras across the southeast. A bright white fireball streaking across the sky, part of it crashing down to earth. Witnesses from Georgia, North and South Carolina, Virginia, and as far west as Tennessee reported sightings around noon. 911 call centers inundated. Some hearing a loud boom, saying they even felt shaking and thought it was an earthquake. Late today, the National Weather Service saying it appears either a meteor or space junk crossed the skies of North Georgia. Emergency officials in Henry County, Georgia, outside Atlanta, believe a piece of that object may have crashed through a resident's roof, smashed through the ceiling before cracking the floor. You can see the hole and the damage left behind. Catherine Farr capturing it on dashcam video while driving down I-85 in Anderson County, South Carolina. That ball of fire falling in clear blue skies.
I think it's just like a once-in-a-lifetime experience, It's really, really cool to see, but just definitely out the ordinary.
Extraordinary for sure. Thanks to Victor for that. Next tonight to the severe thunderstorm watch. New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. all on high alert tonight. Just as the heat moves out, there's also a tornado watch in the Midwest. We'll have the forecast in a moment, but first, Stephanie Ramos assesses the damage.
Tonight, after tornadoes lifted homes into the air and tore across farmland, powerful storms again on the move, firing up in the northern plains.
And you can see where the green skies.
Sirens sounding outside our Rochester, Minnesota affiliate as KAAL's Robin Wolfram broadcasts live.
And of course, we're under a tornado warning. We want you to be safe. Be sure to get to your basements. Take cover.
Overnight, a massive tornado southwest of Rochester tearing across Heartland, Minnesota. Watch as it crosses this road right in front of drivers. And in Largo, Florida, west of Tampa, unbelievable video from a security camera in the Ranchero Village retirement community. The tornado lifting that home all the way up, hanging in the air before it comes crashing back down to the ground. Authorities say a 76-year-old woman was inside at the time, miraculously surviving. Authorities say at least 50 homes were damaged in the area.
Stephanie, thank you. Let's go now to our meteorologist, Lee Goldberg, from our New York partner station, WABC. Lee, We dropped 30 degrees today here, and it still felt warm.
Right, exactly. When you fall from 100 to 70, I mean, sure, you have that room. It's unbelievable. One of the more dramatic drops you'll ever see this time of year because, June sun is strong. We lost that quickly, got into a northeast wind, and it basically, that front just plowed summer about 100 miles to the south and west. And that's why it was still over Philly, feeling like 100 today, and that sparked some severe storms along that front. So severe thunderstorm watch from Philly to D.C. this evening, just some leftover showers in New York City. There's other severe weather working across the Midwest, similar places to where we saw last night, parts of Minnesota and into Wisconsin. This will go through the early evening hours. So we still have a lot of this heat, still sweltering from the Mississippi to the Mid-Atlantic, extreme heat warning in parts of West Virginia and Ohio. But that strong, cool pocket over the Northeast will tone down some of this heat. But we have triple-digit heat from Memphis, Louisville, still to D.C. But watch what happens tomorrow. We barely get to 70 in New York and Boston, Philly around 70, and D.C. finally gets knocked in the low 80s. Short-lived, though. We start to warm up over the weekend, but not to the degree that we just saw. And actually some pretty nice weather as we head into early July. Lindsay?
I feel we have earned it. Lee
Yes.
Goldberg, our thanks to you as always. Here in New York City, the prosecution gave its closing argument against Sean Diddy Combs, telling jurors that he created a climate of fear. Now the defense is planning its closing argument for tomorrow when the jurors will then get the case. ABC's Aaron Katursky is at the courthouse tonight.
Tonight, after a sprawling 7-week case, federal prosecutors tried to tie together all the evidence against Sean Combs, telling the 8-man, 4-woman jury it's time to find the defendant guilty. His mother, twin daughters, and sons filing into the courthouse where prosecutors delivered a nearly 5-hour summation, saying Combs used power, violence, and fear to get what he wanted and forced 2 women, Cassie Ventura and an ex-girlfriend known by the pseudonym Jane, to have sex with male escorts while he watched, directed, and filmed. Jurors saw graphic footage of those encounters and heard gripping testimony about hundreds of them. But today, a prosecutor said one single freak-off is enough. You only need to find the elements of sex trafficking are met on one occasion. Combs has denied charges of sex trafficking, transportation for prostitution, and racketeering conspiracy. Prosecutors pointing to allegations of arson, drugs, and the bribery of a hotel security guard following this 2016 assault of Cassie Ventura as proof Combs ran a criminal enterprise with a cadre of loyal lieutenants. It's his kingdom. Everyone was there to serve him. The defense will deliver its closing tomorrow, Lindsay. The defense called no witnesses during trial, instead arguing Cassie Ventura and Jane were not trafficking victims, but rather long-term girlfriends of Sean Combs who willingly took part in his polyamorous lifestyle. Lindsay?
Aaron Katursky, thank you. Let's bring in ABC News legal contributor Bernardo Villalona. Bernardo, you were in the courtroom once again for the closing arguments. What stood out for you?
Oh my God, Lindsay, what a day, what a day. So the prosecution literally gave a closing for about 5 hours today. But those 5 hours, she had that jury engaged, like hanging at her every word in the sense of we learned so much and we're reminded of so much. Because remember, this has been 7 weeks of trial so far. So she took us back to the very beginning. But in terms of the overall theme, having to deal with power, control, fear, violence, money, sex, all of this encompassed in Sean Combs and how he was the leader of this enterprise and took us back in terms of breaking up the racketeering conspiracy and those predicate acts, but also delved in deep as to the sex trafficking and the transportation to engage in prostitution, which the prosecution was excellent in the sense of pointed out to this jury that consent is not a defense to transportation to engage in prostitution and that there are hundreds of acts. But I would tell you this, Lindsay, I think the most compelling moment, at least for me, that put everything into perspective is when the prosecutor put on the screen a picture of 27 men, 27 escorts that engaged in sex with Jane and also Cassie. First, it was a set of men that only engaged in sex with Cassie. Then there was a set of men that engaged in sex with Jane. And then in the middle was a set of men that engaged in sex with both Cassie and also Jane. So I think that put everything into perspective and summarized these years of sex and freak-offs and hotel nights that Sean Combs engaged in with both Jane and Cassie.
So, okay, you're saying it was compelling. My question is, was it convincing? Because, again, even if these people all had sex with him, that the defense is saying it was all consensual. So it really doesn't matter if it was 27,
Yes.
28, or 127.
Absolutely. But
right?
for transportation to engage in prostitution, consent is not a defense. So even if Cassie wanted to engage in sex with these escorts, because these escorts were being paid for sexual acts and they were being transported over state lines, that is sufficient there to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, at least to that count. But in terms of the racketeering conspiracy, the prosecutor broke it down to this jury in terms of who are the co-conspirators, KK, as well as the security guards, and putting all of their faces onto like one slide every time that they set up the different predicate acts dealing with kidnapping, arson, bribery, and also reminding the jury that sex trafficking as well as the transportation to engage in prostitution are part of those predicate acts as well. Then when she talked about the sex trafficking, she highlighted, when it came to Cassie, let me highlight the Intercontinental video, because that act alone, let's start from the before it happened, doing it happen, and afterwards, that count alone, that incident is sex trafficking in the sense that she was brought over there, had sex with the entertainer that was inside of that room, tried to get away, and when she was beat and dragged to try to go back into that room to finish what they actually started. Same thing with Jane. The prosecutor highlighted, let me highlight 3 different incidents, but let me highlight the incident that involved violence. And that was, in the sense, inside of Jane's apartment, where Sean Combs and her engaged in a fight, and that she was forced to come back into that apartment. And what did Sean Combs say? You're not about to ruin my night, and called an escort, and it engaged in sex at that time as well.
Bernardo Villalona, I mean, your enthusiasm just brings us all right into the courtroom. We are just so you are so compelling to hear us describe it all for us. Thank you so much. In a 5-1 vote tonight, the new CDC advisory panel that was handpicked by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. voted to remove the preservative thimerosal from all future flu vaccines in the United States. The decision came after a presentation and debate with a controversial figure, a nurse who claims that the mercury-based preservative caused her son to be autistic. Before he became health secretary, RFK appeared on podcasts with nurse Lynn Redwood, and she even led an anti-vaccine group that he started. The two share concerns about both childhood vaccinations and the preservative that many in public health say is not based on science. To discuss this further, we're joined now by ABC News medical contributor Dr. Alok Patel. Dr. Patel, so good to have you with us. Tell us, what is this latest evidence on this preservative show?
Well, Lindsay, the first thing I want to tell everyone out there is that thimerosal is largely absent from all childhood vaccines, and only about 4% of flu shots actually have thimerosal in them. It was removed in the early 2000s, around 2001, as a precautionary step, even though there's never been any study suggesting a link between thimerosal and autism or any long-term damage or neurotoxicity. An important distinction for people to understand is that thimerosal does have a form of mercury in it, but this is ethyl mercury, not the type of mercury that people think of with mercury toxicity, such as from eating too much fish, for example. So a lot of people are looking at this decision and seeing that this was more of a symbolic vote as opposed to any necessary or evidence-based intervention.
We know that RFK Jr. has advocated for changes to the CDC's immunization schedule for Americans. Just today, the American Academy of Pediatrics said that the public can no longer trust decisions from the CDC's vaccine panel. That is quite a headline. You're a pediatrician. To whom should parents listen?
Lindsay, it's a huge headline, and I've been hearing from my colleagues in national organizations for the past 2 days. In fact, the American Medical Association issued a statement truly defending fall vaccines that was signed by 78 national committees. So with that being said, parents out there need to do 2 things. Number one, you can trust your healthcare professional, your family doctor, your pediatrician, and also stay curious. I want parents out there to ask those questions. If you're hesitant, that's okay. Go to your doctor and ask those questions, and make sure you always know and look at the background of whom you're getting information from. Because one criticism, Lindsay, of the members on this committee is some have pushed anti-vaccine propaganda in the past. Some of them have even worked for organizations that set out lawsuits against vaccines as well. So you have to know whom you're talking to, where your information is coming from, and always talk to your doctor about those questions.
Updated COVID shots and flu vaccines are set to be available over the next few months. Should children get them? And what about everybody else?
Strongly suggested, Linsey, that everyone out there who is eligible goes out and gets those updated COVID boosters, your flu shot, and I'm also going to throw in RSV as well for those infants under 8 months, pregnant individuals, and older adults, because this cold and flu season, we could potentially get hit with all three. And even though COVID has faded from headlines, that doesn't mean the virus is not out there constantly mutating and trying to find new ways to infect all of us. So vaccines, highly recommended, as are all those usual steps of hygiene, wearing a mask, washing hands, and staying home if you're sick.
And just in the last 15 seconds that we have, Doctor, let me put you on the spot here. Do you feel that vaccines are safe, those that are, at this point, suggested highly to parents?
Unequivocally, Linsey, safe, effective. People can absolutely trust this schedule and know that vaccines have saved millions of lives globally, which is why we've trusted them for over half a century.
Dr. Alok Patel, we thank you so much as always.
Thank you.
Today, the Supreme Court ruled that Planned Parenthood and one of its patients cannot sue the state of South Carolina over its effort to deny funding to the group. The ruling could pave the way for other states to follow suit, meaning other Medicaid recipients and Planned Parenthood no longer have the right to sue states that may cut off the funding. More than 50,000 Medicaid recipients receive care from the organization, including non-abortion care like cancer screenings and contraceptive treatments. The Justice Department says that the Trump administration plans to deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia again after he was already wrongfully deported to El Salvador. This time he could be deported to a third country. This comes just 3 weeks after Abrego Garcia was brought back to the U.S. His lawyers filed an emergency motion this morning asking that the Maryland husband and father be released by the criminal court in Tennessee and returned to Maryland, insisting the government should not remove him from the U.S. A Justice Department lawyer acknowledged there were no imminent plans to remove him. Coming up, during the L.A. wildfires, firefighters rushed in to save residents and their homes. Thousands spent weeks on the front lines, breathing in smoke laden with toxic contaminants. Now, many of them find themselves with mounting health issues. In tonight's Prime Focus, Matt Gutman investigates what's being done now to try to save the firefighters. And later, the much-anticipated wedding of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and journalist Lauren Sanchez. It's happening tonight in Venice. Celebrities including Oprah and Tom Brady are there, but few other details have been spilled about this super exclusive event. We'll take you there when we come back. Welcome back, everyone. Among the ashes and scattered rubble of what was lost lies another potential danger, one not exactly visible to the naked eye. Growing health concerns for some of the first responders who rushed into flames in desperate attempts to save lives and homes. And this is the new concern. Some are even drawing parallels to the medical aftermath of 9/11. In tonight's Prime Focus, our Matt Gutman investigates what's being done to protect the health of those who protect us.
This is what the PCH looks like at Will Rogers.
That's Los Angeles Fire Captain Eric Scott in the initial hours of the Palisades fire. The flames bellowing down the canyons, tearing through the streets below.
When did you know that this was going to be different than almost anything you've ever dealt with?
That night of January 7th, the wind was unlike anything I've ever seen before.
Scott started his career as a firefighter paramedic.
It's a very fast-moving fire.
Now he's the public face of the LA Fire Department.
How many days were you out there working on that fire?
For me, I was out there personally for 28 days. So that was by far the longest deployment I've had over the last 20 years.
This fire has crested this little hill we're on. The entire basin here is engulfed in flames.
More than 16,000 homes burned in the Eaton and Palisades fires and thousands of vehicles. The fires cooking off a toxic brew of contaminants.
Were you wearing a mask the first few days?
We do the best we can. We carry masks with us, hoods, bandanas, but in a wildfire, it's 20, 30 days sometimes.
But now, nearly 6 months after thousands of firefighters battled those infernos, initially focused on public health and safety, many are now finding it's their own health on the line.
So you just pulled an inhaler from your pocket?
Right.
You never told me about that. You were actually still using it.
Yes. Yeah, just to be able to open up your lungs when you have difficult days.
That's a bit of a gut punch.
Firefighters in general are dealing with that all over.
Scott says he himself began experiencing respiratory issues while the Palisades fire was still burning.
For me, it was just started with a persistent cough that was annoying and didn't go away.
A number of different studies are now monitoring firefighter exposures to toxic contaminants from the LA wildfires, using everything from donated tissue samples to silicone wristbands that some of the firefighters wore as they battled the fires, which are now being measured for contaminant absorption.
Here we can see the different...
One study already reporting preliminary results from blood of a small sample of firefighters who responded in LA.
We found high amounts of lead in the blood of firefighters as well as mercury. And that also is consistent with the fact that those two toxic metals were very high in the air about 2 days before we collected the blood.
Dr. Kari Nadeau at the Harvard Medical School is part of the LA Fire Health Study, a 10-year collaboration of a number of different institutions working to assess the health impacts of the wildfire emissions.
We're really excited to be able to help our science get to the public in real time to help understand both the short-term and long-term effects of wildfire smoke.
The researchers have already been able to trace lead and mercury in those initial findings all the way to the cells of the firefighters. And these are toxic metals that could have potential consequences down the line.
They affect the DNA so that the DNA is changed in its function. In this regard, the wildfire smoke miscues the immune system so that it gets activated in a chronic way, so that it causes a lot of inflammation that can lead to diseases like lung disease, heart disease, brain diseases, cancer.
At Cedars-Sinai, Dr. Susan Chang is studying the health impacts among both civilians and firefighters, impacts she says are already occurring.
That's actually translated to health outcomes that we're starting to see. We start to see them in our emergency rooms, in our clinics, and we're seeing the after effects take place even beyond those areas.
While doctors can't say with certainty that any one toxin caused someone's cancer, studies estimate that people exposed to wildfire smoke face higher risks of cancer, respiratory disease, and immune system changes. As these wildfires become larger, more intense, and more destructive, more firefighters across the country are being called in.
Wildfire was predominantly a West Coast issue. We're now seeing wildfires from coast to coast.
Edward Kelly is the president of the International Association of Firefighters Union.
We don't have anything on the market right now that is adequate to protect us from these exposures when we're fighting these wildfires.
Occupational hazards are still a chief concern in this line of work.
The fact is, the actual exposures we endure during the course of a career take a greater toll than the risk when we put our lives on the line day in, day out, going out the door. Testimony to that is the fact that we've lost more firefighters in New York City from their exposures working at Ground Zero than we did on 9/11.
My name is Michael O'Connell, and I'm a retired lieutenant from the New York City Fire Department. I want to personally thank the committee members for allowing me to be here today to tell my story, which is really no different from the thousands of others who suffer from their heroic actions. These are the bills that, we got passed.
Now, retired Lieutenant Michael O'Connell has become an advocate for continued funding for 9/11 responders.
We went days with nothing, and then I want to say maybe a few days in, they gave you your regular painter's dusk mask. I think maybe by the next week, I remember having like a mask that had like a respirator.
In the years after, he was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called sarcoidosis, related to his 9/11 exposure.
I live with this on a daily basis, and so many people are still getting sick and dying.
People are describing this as a 9/11 type event for first responders. Is that something that concerns you?
Yeah, of course it's concerning. We know the significant cancer and deaths that transpired. So they're learning best practices, and we're trying to bring that information here to Los Angeles.
And experts are hopeful the work being done now will help firefighters in the future.
There are therapies that can help prevent worsening of inflammation. There are therapies that if you can detect it early, you can get in early and try to prevent the worsening of cancer, for example, or the worsening of dementia, or the worsening of asthma. And detecting it early matters.
There is no doubt it's a long road ahead for Los Angeles. Uncertainty for those who lost so much, including some of the first responders who rushed in to try to save what and who they could. Captain Scott's respiratory issues are ongoing, and he continues to see a pulmonologist.
We really encourage our membership to go to annual full physical checkup.
To get a baseline?
Yes, and then you'll have an idea when things are spiking and not just try to be macho and put it off, but we got to try to take care of ourselves for the long haul.
And what remains strong, perhaps stronger than ever, might be the oath of the firefighter.
This is something we signed up for, and we're there to protect life and property, and we take the precautions that we can, and we move forward.
I mean, does it feel like you're mortgaging your future in order to do your job now?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, I don't concentrate on that, and I think, I'm just a spokesperson for all firefighters, and we're kind of built the same way. We're there to mitigate the emergency, to help those that we are sworn to serve, and at times that will and does come at our own risk.
Part of what makes them so heroic. Our thanks to Matt Gutman for that. Coming up, star-studded and controversial, how one of the richest men in the world's wedding is unfolding. And it's been a career like no other. As Anna Wintour steps down as Vogue's infamous editor-in-chief, we take a look at her fashion, influence, and reputation for perfection by the numbers. Welcome back, everyone. There was a shocking announcement from the world of fashion today. Vogue U.S. editor-in-chief Anna Wintour said she is voluntarily reducing her workload and seeking someone to fill the new role of head of editorial content at Vogue U.S. In the meantime, she'll continue in her current role as chief content officer for Condé Nast. We dissect Anna Wintour's career in tonight's By the Numbers. At 75 years old, Wintour has now been at the helm of American Vogue for 37 years, half of her life. It really wouldn't be fair to call the famously driven editor a Nepo baby, but it is important to note that Wintour's father, Charles, was editor of the London-based Evening Standard from 1959 to 1976. Wintour's rise within New York's fashion circle began when she moved here in 1975, 50 years ago, to become a junior fashion editor for Harper's Bazaar. The 2003 novel, The Devil Wears Prada, was famously written by one of Wintour's former assistants and soon became one of the top-grossing films of 2006, earning $326 million worldwide. It's well known that the lead character's personality, Miranda Priestley, played by Meryl Streep, is not so loosely based on Wintour's own often inscrutable personality. Aside from her work at Vogue and Condé Nast, Wintour has also chaired the Met Gala almost every year since 1997, raising hundreds of millions of dollars for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute. And still ahead, a break-in at the LA home of Brad Pitt, how the suspects got inside and what they did once they entered. And the Congressional Gold Medal is awarded to Army Rangers from World War II. It is a moving moment you won't want to miss. How one Major League Baseball fan got himself banned from every ballpark during a game on Wednesday. Trump Mobile is removing the Made in America label from its phones. And do you or your kids play Fortnite? If so, you may be owed some cash. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. A 22-year-old fan has been banned indefinitely from all Major League Baseball ballparks after yelling something about Arizona Diamondbacks second baseman Ketel Marte's late mother during last night's game against the Chicago White Sox. Marte was brought to tears by the incident, which occurred while he was at bat in the seventh inning. Marte's mother, Elpidia Valdez, died in a car accident in the Dominican Republic in 2017. Team personnel heard the comment and asked for the fan to be ejected. General Motors is recalling more than 62,000 vehicles over the risk that a fault in the brake pressure sensor assembly may allow fluid to leak, increasing chances of an electrical short that could spark a fire. The defect was caused by the use of an unauthorized chemical by the supplier of the brake assembly that caused a part to degrade over time. The recall covers certain 2019 to 2024 Chevrolet Silverado vehicles. About 1% of the recalled vehicles are expected to have the defect. The Federal Trade Commission is issuing more than $126 million in refunds to Fortnite players who were charged for in-game items they didn't want. The payments are part of a 2023 settlement with Epic Games, the Fortnite developer, over allegations the company used deceptive practices to trick players into making unwanted purchases. The company says no developer creates a game with the intention of ending up here. The video game industry is a place of fast-moving innovation where player expectations are high and new ideas are paramount. Fortnite players, parents, or guardians who have yet to submit a claim have until July 9th to file. The Trump Organization scrapped a reference on its website that its recently revealed smartphone will be made in the U.S. The website now says the phones are designed and brought to life in the United States instead. The move comes amid doubts that such a smartphone could be made in America at a competitive price point. House Speaker Mike Johnson presented the Congressional Gold Medal to 5 World War II Army Ranger veterans today in recognition of their dedication and extraordinary service during the war.
This band of brothers is so deserving, and this day, to be frank, is long overdue.
The Speaker presented the medals to Joseph Drake and John Wardell at the Capitol. The other 3 Rangers were unable to travel, but were also honored. The Gold Medal is awarded by Congress for distinguished achievements and contributions to society.
Miguel, I have a question for you.
A high school graduate this week is getting much more than a diploma at his graduation in Newark, New Jersey. Miguel Rodriguez Bermudez has said in the past that he wanted to become a music teacher in the Newark public schools.
Here's a $74,000 contract.
So right on the stage, Newark School Superintendent Roger Leon made him an offer. 34 Newark high school graduates got conditional contracts at their graduation. The stipulation that they get their teaching certifications. The superintendent calls it an investment in homegrown talent. Brad Pitt's Los Angeles home was ransacked by burglars Wednesday night. It's unclear if Pitt was targeted or if these burglars simply broke into what they thought was another luxury home. Police say that's often the case because there's so many celebrities in the area. Our Trevor Ault has this story.
Tonight, Hollywood superstar Brad Pitt is the latest celebrity victim in a string of brazen home burglaries. Law enforcement sources tell ABC News police responded to a call at the actor's home around 10:30 last night. They say 3 suspects scaled a fence to gain entry to the yard, then smashed through a front window. Pitt was not home at the time. The star's been on the road promoting his new movie F1, seen here at the London premiere earlier this week. Police say the suspects ransacked the star's home with an unknown number of items taken. Investigators are now searching for any surveillance video from the home and the area. The break-in is the latest in a series of alarming crimes at the homes of Hollywood's biggest stars. Just last month, police say a man smashed his vehicle through the gate at Jennifer Aniston's property while the actress was home, and he was detained by private security. Nicole Kidman's house was burglarized in February, and Tom Hanks was victimized last year.
Our thanks to Trevor Ault. It could be the event of the season, a wedding for one of the richest men in the world, but it's also stoking controversy as preparations are underway in Venice with some protesting its presence. It has not stopped the celebrities from arriving and the speculation from growing over just what to expect from this ceremony. ABC's Maggie Rulli is in Venice. Maggie.
Hey, Lindsay, after all of that secrecy, we can finally confirm the location of the first event. It is right here in the cloisters of a local church, Madonna del Orto, just around the corner there. But Lindsay, as expected, security is really tight. So this is as close as us or any media can get. You can see a group of people right now. I think they're yelling for Kim, actually. So people might be coming out. They've been stationed there all night long, trying to get a glimpse of these A-listers going in and out. You can peek around a corner, Lindsay. You really can't see anything much, but if you listen, you can hear the music. Wedding bells are ringing in Venice for billionaire Jeff Bezos and fiancée Lauren Sanchez. With a smooch on a yacht, it's a modern take on the ancient city's history of power and opulence in what's sure to be a prime event. The Amazon founder and his future bride inviting 200 of their closest friends and family. And the guest list, a who's who of the world's most famous, richest, and powerful people who were seen suited up, ready for the first celebration of the weekend. Earlier, reporters captured their arrivals. Oprah Winfrey, Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, Kim Kardashian and her mom, Kris Jenner. And we're here in Venice, too. About 90 private jets touched down at Venice Airport, and we saw others making their grand entrance by water. Look at that. That is just one of many multi-million-dollar yachts that we're seeing here in the Venetian Lagoon. Bezos is currently the world's fourth richest man at an estimated $227 billion net worth, and his wedding costing up to a whopping $55 million. And many of the A-list guests have been seen checking into these hotels along the Grand Canal, where rooms can run up to $10,000 a night. Security is tight at tonight's first kickoff event held in the gardens of Madonna dell'Orto, a local prominent church. It's a prelude, all leading up to the main event, a reported black tie wedding extravaganza, potentially located at San Giorgio Island. Why do you think there's something happening on San Giorgio?
So, when I was there a couple of days ago, there were so many preparations happening. You could see there were flowers being delivered, massive crates. We even got a glimpse of potentially a colour scheme because there were white flowers, orange flowers with little dashes of purple. It was really great to see everything coming together. So one thing's for sure, there is something happening on the island. And with this much money and power concentrated in one floating city, security and secrecy are paramount and a challenge. So this is one of the reasons why it is so logistically difficult to plan a wedding like this in Venice. This is how everyone gets around, whether you're in a taxi like I am, getting to work, police, construction. Everyone gets around on these boats. And now just imagine doing this with billionaires, movie stars, and tech mogul's. And to add to these logistical hurdles, protesters who have taken over famous landmarks. A Bezos mannequin floating on an Amazon box dumped in the Grand Canal. And Greenpeace unfurling this banner in San Marcos Square.
If you can afford to shut down a city for a wedding, then yes, you can pay more taxes, and yes, you can help out people in the world that need it. That's how I feel about it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm sorry that Venice has to go through that.
Some groups now threatening to plan major demonstrations the day of the wedding. Protesters claim that because of their threat of demonstrations on the wedding day, the couple was forced to move one of their venues here. This is called the Arsenal, an old Navy shipyard, and you can see it has 2 miles of these tall, thick brick walls, potentially the perfect place for privacy. But not all locals are unhappy, like John, who lives and works in hospitality here in Venice.
I think that Bezos made the best choice for his wedding.
Have you noticed that business is busier because of the wedding?
Yes, absolutely. The work on the city is at high level in this moment, and everybody is excited or anxious for the event.
A couple keeping it local. Reportedly 80% of vendors for the wedding will be Venetian businesses. And in the wedding invitation obtained by ABC News, the couple requests no gifts from their guests and says they'll donate to 3 Venetian charities instead. And Lindsay, now that things have officially kicked off, we are all waiting for that big black tie wedding event tomorrow night. And if the spectacle from tonight is any indication, I think tomorrow is going to be even bigger. Lindsay.
All right, Maggie, try to have some fun there. That is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.